Hello everyone, we're live. I'm very happy to introduce Andy Hill, who's doing an author chat with us tonight, and I'm Sam standing because she's poorly. I'm just going to let Andy introduce himself and tell us a bit about his books now.
Thanks, Kaz. I hope Sam's sort of on the mend. My name's Andy Hill. I write as AJ Hill. My first crime novel is set in the New Forest. It's called Dead Drift. And without giving too much away, my central protagonist is a guy called Jack Lunn, who's a former DI, medically retired for about 20 years. He works in Lyndhurst, which is the capital of the New Forest, and I lived in the New Forest myself for about 30 years. He still has plenty of contacts within the police service, old colleagues. He's been an estate agent for the last 20 years. And the book opens with him discovering the body of somebody he considers to be a friend floating down the river whilst he's fishing it on the River Test, which is arguably the finest trout stream in the world. His sidekick, for want of a better word, is his partner's daughter, Jem, who is ex-military intelligence and a really sharp cookie, speaks several languages, pretty much has an eidetic memory, and is not afraid to bend the rules at all. He lives with his partner, Sarah, who also has another daughter called Eden, and Jack himself has two daughters, and he is divorced from their mother, who has remarried somebody who Jack used to work with and was not a particularly good close friend of. So there's a little bit of conflict there. The reason why I said it in the New Forest was because I lived there. And, you know, it's the old adage, write what you know. I guess I did a little bit of research. There wasn't that much in terms of crime novels other than Matt Arledge's, MJ Arledge's, Eeny Meeny and one or two others written there. So I kind of claimed it. And Matt's books are fairly hazy about where in the New Forest, where I'm really specific about where I am. And it wanders off into Southampton as well, simply because that's where the HQ for the police is. And yeah, I hope people enjoy it. It's got a bit of cozy crime. It's got a bit of police procedural. It's a bit of a crossover, really, and that was fairly deliberate. There had to be enough police procedural in there because he's an ex-copper. And I kind of wanted to give a nod to sort of the golden age, because I didn't want him to be a police officer and being hidebound by health and safety and stuff like that. I wanted him to be able to poke into corners that perhaps the police didn't know about. And with Jack having been an estate agent for 20 years, he knows lots of people. Without giving too much away, I've worked in property for over 30 years myself, and was an estate agent in the New Forest for about 14 years. And I could not walk through the local supermarket without bumping into people that I'd sold for or that had bought from me. So Jack, you know, has a lot of contacts inside and outside of the norm from that the police officers would have.
Makes sense. So we've got some hellos from Laura, Leslie, and Sam. So,
hi all.
Sam has said the first thing she noticed about your book is the cover. It's striking.
Yeah, that wasn't the first cover that got sent to me. When Spellbound sent me the first cover, I sent it straight back and said no, no, and thrice no. And then they came back with this one. I was really pleased with it. It wasn't quite what I envisaged, but in actual fact, it kind of exceeded my expectations. So yeah, I thought it was a bold choice and a great choice. I'm really chuffed with it.
So I started reading your book, obviously, only at short notice. I'm not very far in. But what I noticed is there's a lot of a love of fly fishing.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it's right what you know, and I'm a keen fly fisherman myself. I don't tie flies like he does, like Jack does. But I wanted, I guess I wanted him to have a space where he could be meditative, and that's always been his place for thought, is on a bankside. And as a fly fisher myself, I find it really a lovely way to sort of cleanse yourself of the troubles and the woes of the world. Plus, you get supper out of it.
If you like fish.
Indeed, yeah.
So I'm just trying to. Leslie wants to know if she can see the cover.
I don't actually have a copy. I'm still waiting for my author copies. Oh, I'll tell you what I can do. I can stick it up on my phone, can't I?
I was going to say, there must be a way we can do this.
Yeah, I've definitely got. Excuse me, scrolling through my phone with gay abandon.
Sam is watching, so if all else fails, we can get Sam to post a link to. There you go.
There we go. I'm sorry, you're reading it probably backwards, or at least it looks backwards to me. I hope it's legible. Yeah, I just thought it was really sort of haunting, and just had a really nice sort of feel to the cover. And originally, I'd sent over a photo that I'd taken on the River Test. It's on the lower Test, and it shows the river keeper's cottage, which is probably, I would imagine, Victorian, which is right on the bankside, and it sort of overhung with branches and that kind of thing, as sort of how I kind of envisaged the cover. So they came up with something that I was really pleased with, and it harks back to the riverside and to the fishing element. And yeah, I must admit the early drafts had far too much sort of description of fly fishing. So what you have now is a much more hopefully condensed, but it still gives you a feel for what's going on.
How did you find doing the police procedural aspects?
I'm an ex-copper myself, and Graham Bartlett, who's Peter James's police advisor, has definitely helped me out on a couple of bits and pieces. And his advice to me was pretty much the same as Peter: when in doubt, fudge it. But also, I got in contact with a CSI who gave me some pointers about how to conduct themselves in a crime scene. So yeah, that was really helpful. But I haven't sort of dwelt too deeply on the police procedural time sort of side of things. Because there are better people at it, and there are people writing police procedurals who are far better at it than me. I hope that people were going to get a sense that there was a police procedural involvement there, but not down to the nitty gritty and the minutiae of it. More as well, I suppose there's a part of me that felt that if I got bogged down in it, and Jack's not directly involved in it, which he wouldn't be, it was kind of taking away from the pace. Hopefully, don't know. Hopefully, it worked.
Are you planning for this to be a series?
Yeah, number 2 is sort of 60,000 plus words done, and has a tentative title of Bloody Butcher. So yeah, Jack will be back. Jack and Jem will be back. Yeah, they should be out sometime sort of late summer, early autumn. And then yeah, I've got an idea for 3 more, and there's a standalone that keeps sort of wanting to be written, and then there's a character that will get introduced in one of the 5 that then I'd like to write about as well, because there's an idea that I have with a dual timeline, or a setting on the run up to D-Day, because one of the interesting things about the New Forest was it was one of the areas they really used for the build up to D-Day. So they actually had 6 aerodromes on the run up to D-Day, all based in the New Forest. And SOE, which was the forerunner of MI6, was based at Bewley, where the Motor Museum is now. And so that was kind of SOE's finishing school, and that was the birthplace really of MI6. So yeah, and one of the stories that I'm going to try and and I don't want. The thing about talking about stuff like this is you give other people ideas, and I don't really want to do that too much. But I'll tell you this wonderful story that I heard, and I then just thought to myself, oh my gosh, I really have to include this in this storyline. There's a really strong witchcraft connection in the New Forest, and there was a coven of witches still operating during the Second World War, white witches, and they decided to project what's known as a cone of power to prevent Hitler invading, and this was 1939, early 40. So they did this, and they did it in November, naked, and 3 of them died of pneumonia. And I just thought, if I don't get the opportunity to include witchcraft in there, as I say, there's still a strong sort of line of witchcraft within the New Forest. Then it would be sad. I just thought it was an interesting thing to do. But yeah, I mean, the New Forest itself is truly fascinating. I mean, most people know that William Rufus, who was the king, was killed in a hunting accident there, and then 2 of his sons were also killed in the New Forest on hunting accidents, and also one of his grandsons. But what people don't know, the story behind that is, when they decided they wanted it as a royal hunting ground, they cleared a lot of the commoners off, and the commoners cursed William Rufus's line. So, that's I just thought that's just so interesting. So yeah, I'm not going to be going that far back in time though.
I did know the story about the ritual in the New Forest of.
Oh wow, that's brilliant! Yeah.
Second World War. I've never been, but don't know how I knew that story. You got so many questions coming in, so
brilliant.
Scroll back up and start asking you some of them that have happened. So we've got Sam asking how you prepared for publication day.
Oh, do you know, it was being a debut author, I really had no idea what to expect, and it was a Sunday. I think it was a Sunday, and I actually did an interview with Hobeck Books, with Adrian and Rebecca, actually on the day, which was great because I met them at Harrogate and got on really well with them, and they're lovely people, good people to spend time with, and so I had that to look forward to, and then I kind of just kept all of my expectations down, because I the temptation, of course, is to go, it's all going to be marvelous, it's going to be a wonderful bestseller. The reality is, I've been around the book world, and particularly the crime book world, for long enough to realize that there's only a few authors out there making squillions, and I just sort of looked at it in terms of, if some people buy my book and they enjoy it, happy days, job done. And yes, it would be a dream to be actually writing full time rather than working and then writing at the in between times. And maybe that will happen for me at some point. We'll wait and see. I just hope people enjoy the books, and if they do that, then that's kind of job done as far as I'm concerned.
I had the genuine pleasure of interviewing Adrian and Rebecca last week, I think.
They're lovely.
Before. Really nice. They were great fun to talk to.
Mm.
Andrew from Nottingham has asked you if your books are available in audio and large print.
They are not, I'm afraid. They at the moment it is Kindle only and print on demand, I'm afraid. It's certainly something that I would love to see them as audiobooks. I think for people who are sight impaired, I think it's wonderful. I think an awful lot of people as well travel around the country, they're with their job and everything like that, and an audio book is what they listen to rather than music or the radio or something like that. And I'd absolutely adore the books to become audio books. So yeah, please lobby Spellbound and tell them they need to be as audio books. That would be fantastic. I'd be so chuffed with that. That would be brilliant. And that's the weird thing. I've mentioned that my author copies haven't actually arrived as yet. My neighbour brought round books 2 days after publication date for me to sign, and that was the first time I ever signed my own books and first time I ever held my own books, and that was weird in a good way, but it was still a bit weird. I guess that's the funny thing. You don't know what to expect, and everything is then a surprise. Oh, good tip there from Laura for our friend up in Nottingham. I was only in Nottingham last Thursday, in actual fact, down by the Trent. Lovely city. I look after some buildings there, and I love it up there. It's absolutely smashing. I've got an old friend who I always try and get a coffee with up there at the station before I catch the train back. Laura says if you get the Kindle version, you can increase the font size or do a budget audio with the Alexa app. What a great tip. Fantastic. Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, the Alexa will read out Kindle books to you.
Brilliant.
Apparently, if you have it. So Andrew also said, and I really like how he's written this, he said the description of the detective in your book sounds great. And he also thinks that when you read crime novels, it's like being on a journey. And as you read, your imagination kicks in.
Yeah. And one of the things I tried to do is to make the New Forester character as well, so that people get a sense of the place. I just felt that was really important. I mean, if you tot up the number of days that there are visitors in the New Forest, not in normal pre-pandemic days, something like 13 million days of visitors to the New Forest, which is that's unbelievable. It's a phenomenal number of people go there and they camp or they caravan or whatever, or just take a day trip. And it's a beautiful part of the country. You've got water on two sides with Southampton Water and the Channel, and Lymington, obviously, and not just Lyndhurst but Brockenhurst. And there's lots of lovely villages dotted through the place, and there's some great pubs, good food, it was a lovely place to live in.
So a question I like to ask people who have got a really strong sort of sense of location in their books is, do you sort of take photos of where you've set them?
Yeah.
On the website so people can see and visualize places.
Well, it's not so much on. I mean, I think if people are friends of mine on Facebook, they probably got bored to death with me posting little short videos on the run up to the launch date, because I went down to the New Forest in between Christmas and New Year and filmed, I think, about 7 or 8 little short videos from places that are important in the book. So one was down at the Riverkeeper's cottage on the Lower Test. I did the first actual video that I released was at Conan Doyle's grave in Minstead, which is in the New Forest. I thought, well, if I'm going to start the journey off, I might as well start it off with the King of Crime and the creator of Sherlock Holmes. But we did other little bits and pieces in Lyndhurst High Street and at Lyndhurst Nick at the pub. That features in there, which is called the Blue Lamp in the book, but is actually the Waterloo Arms, and it is actually only 40 yards away from Lyndhurst Nick. And yeah, it was. And there's a hill, a small hill just outside of Lyndhurst, overlooking the cricket pitch, and there's a big yew tree with a bench. And it's known as Bolton's Bench. And there's an incident that happens there, so I filmed a little bit there as well. And I did film also outside Hampshire Police Headquarters in Southampton. Went in and was very, very politely asked if I could do that and got clearance to do it. But then there was just too much road noise, so we just couldn't use it in the end. But yeah, I still have those videos and I still have those photos to remind me of the place, and yeah, and I think it's something that I'll do as I continue to write the books, is to continue to go down and take photos and just be there, soak up the atmosphere.
Laura's asked you one of our favourite questions, which is, have you acted out a scene to help with the writing process?
Oh no, I have. I've done what an awful lot of writers do, which is look in the mirror and speak the words. I'll be really honest, and there's the central character Jack Lunn. There's a lot of me in him, and so consequently, when if I'm writing dialogue for him, it's kind of a slightly probably sanitized, taking the language out, but it is kind of me speaking, and there's a strange story about how Jem came about, because Jem actually started off as a male character, and as I was sort of getting towards the end of actually finishing off the manuscript, and it had been through edits already. And Katie, I must mention Katie, who is my editor, who was fantastic. And I thought I was just on the last few chapters, and we'd have to finish manuscript. And she rang me up and said, the character Dom, how do you feel about him being female? And I said, it's something that I kind of toyed with, but I'd kind of just left it. And she asked me to write a character study and about 500 or 600 words of an interchange between her and Jack, which I did and sent off to her. And then she was on the phone about 24 hours later laughing at me, saying basically, you've stitched yourself up. And I said, yeah, I knew I kind of had, because the character study I did was really full. Much fuller than any other character study that I did. And then the interchange really worked well. And then, of course, I'm having to go through all the manuscript, changing everything. And as I'm doing that, I'm just giving Jem more and more things to do. Although Jack has got a lot of me in him, Jem's my favourite character, because she's Jack strolls off, will stroll off into grey areas, and sort of tentatively cross boundaries, but Jem, bold, you draw a line in the sand, Jem will rub it out and march across it. Because, I think from her background in military intelligence, where what matters was getting the intelligence because it could save lives, and you do anything to do that. She is prepared to stretch the boundaries a wee bit, and I think that appeals to the latent rebel in me. And if you spoke to some of my schoolmasters at the boarding school, they would say you were never a latent rebel, you were just a rebel. So yeah, I may have calmed down in old age, but maybe I'm reliving my youth through Jem.
You've already answered this a little bit, but Sam had asked if any of the characters changed in ways you didn't expect during writing.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about Jem, and I must admit, in the very first draft, I'd probably written about 35,000 words, and the detective chief superintendent, who's called Rona Blacklock in the book, was male at that stage, and I got to about 35,000 words, and the character didn't feel right as a male character, so I changed it to Rona, and she became much more real to me. And I guess that's the thing, is that they're in my head, they're living, breathing characters, and that's really, really important.
What made you want to write crime?
Well, I've always I've enjoyed reading crime, I suppose, since the famous five. So yeah, Agatha Christie, Sherlock Holmes, and then I kind of sort of started reading more modern crime. So I guess Peter Robinson and DCI Banks, and I'm just trying to think of some of the other people. Pauline Rowson, who I met at CSI Portsmouth when that used to run, and over the years I've gone to a lot of crime writing festivals, and then I suppose 4, maybe 5 years ago, Mike Stotter and Ali Karim from the E-Zine Shots Mag asked me to review, which was wonderful. You get free books, and without naming names, I received a few books that I thought, blimey, how did these get published? I could do better than this. And then that kind of made me think, hell yeah, I could do better than this. So that's what generated me towards writing. And I guess that people sort of misjudged what I would write. A lot of people sort of said they expected noir or hard boiled or really gritty sort of stuff from me, but that's not me. I love a traditional whodunit. There's something lovely about somebody, that main protagonist taking you with them on that journey of discovery, and I really enjoyed that.
So give us some of your top reads of the year so far.
Oh gosh, that's dreadful. I've just read Dark Pines, and the name escapes me. Dark-haired guy, great big dog.
Will Dean.
I've just read Louise Phillips's latest, which I really enjoyed, and I haven't done the review for that, so bad me. I'm actually I've got a friend of mine has sent me the first 5,000 words of his manuscript, so I've got to have a little look at that. I will devour anything that Mike Craven writes. I love his writing. I love his writing style as well. And he's oh gosh, Who am I thinking of? Oh, I'm just trying to think. I now wish I was upstairs where my bookcases are, because I'd be going this one and this one and this. I am awful with names and titles, but the nice thing is that I guess over the years, I've become friends with people like Mike, with Simon Kernick and Kevin Wignall and Sarah Pinborough and people like that. I've had conversations with Ian Rankin and Peter James, and Peter lives used to live about a mile and a half from where I lived, so I would have bumped into him occasionally. But one of the things that I love, Neil Broadfoot. Read Neil Broadfoot if you like gritty stuff. A great Scottish writer, in my opinion, and well worth reading. I guess the joy is discovering a new writer, getting that debut from a new writer, and he is gonna absolutely bloody kill me because his name is completely gone. This is what happens, people, when you get old and you get grey hair, you get forgetful. But yeah, it is a joy. I'm so looking forward to seeing friends at Crime Fest. I've just booked up to go to Iceland Noir as well, and I've met Esa Sigurðard's daughter and Lilia and Junina, and one or two of the other Icelandic writers over the time. And Sarah Pinborough is always a joy to spend time with. She's genuine talent, and yeah, I got oh gosh, what was the one that was Netflixed? Oh gosh, I can't think what is now. But she had one very recently on Netflix, and I actually got an ARC of that and reviewed it for Netflix. I loved it. I loved the twist at the end. She's a very clever writer and a delight to spend time with.
Sam has said, and she's trying to get me into trouble because we've had a few ARCs of the botanist flying around in UK BBC land, and she's saying you're in for a treat with it.
Brilliant.
I was resisting the urge to say that because I got told off for talking about how good it was last time.
Yeah, I think it's a lovely. I think there's a love story there. It's not a love story in the traditional sense in terms of they're in a relationship, but they are in a relationship. They just don't know it. And I think there is this true love and caring between the two of them about each other, and I think that's really lovely. I think that's touching. She really cares about him, and he cares about her. So yeah, I think, and I think they're just interesting characters. And Mike writes really well. I like his stuff.
He does write really well, and The Botanist is
spot on,
top notch. Mike writing.
Yeah, and Samantha says, yeah, behind her eyes. Yeah,
she would know. She's good at stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm dreadful with stuff like that. I go, if people sort of spring stuff on me, I'm like, oh, the mind goes blank. Dreadful.
Don't sign up for the pub quiz with Ben then.
Oh God, I'm okay with pub quizzes because normally you get the questions, you get and I can actually go through them and think, oh, I work through the alphabet if it's like a movie star or something like that, and spend time like that. And it's killing me now because the guy I wanted to talk about, who I got the ARC of his first novel. I know his name begins with R, and it's really paining me that I can't think who it is. Do you mind if I go and get the damn book?
It's gone. Oh, it's very gone. I can hear the sound of people going upstairs. Let's wait and see what this book is. And then I'll ask Laura's question when he comes back.
There we go. Rod Reynolds is his name. I think this is, this is the latest one he's got out, Blood Red City. But I got the ARC and I didn't sort of read anything about Rod at all. I just read the book and then did the review. And then at Crime Fest, this is going back a few years because I think that's his fourth that he's out now. This bloke came up to me and said, "Oh, cheers, mate, for the review." And I said, "Well, what?" He said, "Oh, for the book." And I said, "But you're American." He said, "No, I'm from London, mate." And it was so soaked in Americana, and was written sort of early 50s. So it's got, his main central protagonist is a reporter, and there's mob involvement, stuff like that. But it was really, really authentic. I genuinely thought the guy was American, and I mean, Rod and I have become friends now, so I think he might have forgiven me for not thinking he was British and actually not reading the acknowledgements.
I love it when authors trick you about stuff. Sam's asked me what I'm reading. I think that was to fill time while you were going upstairs.
Oh,
I'm reading Firekeeper's Daughter, which is a YA crime, but it features a Native American young girl helping the detectives to work out what's happening, and it's really good, like really fascinating, really steeped in that kind of history. And I'm reading Miss Seaton Draws the Line, I think it is. I've discovered this really great old thing called Miss Seaton. That's what I've been reading. Lovely, cozy mysteries that I'm quite enjoying.
And I've really enjoyed reading Dark Pines. As you can see, I'm nearly finished. And such an interesting character, and Will writes really well. And plus the fact he's a thoroughly nice guy.
Yeah, we've had Will on. He's great. Yeah. Laura wanted to know if you could do a crossover story with any other fictional detective, who would it be?
Oh, gosh. I guess, if Matt Arledge wanted to put Jack and his central protagonist together, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Pauline Rowson has a detective operating in Portsmouth, so still Hampshire Police. So who sort of operates in the Marine Division, and obviously there's lots of water around the New Forest, so that's always a possibility. Maybe one of those two. I guess they would be the ones to go to, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's quite a tricky question, isn't it? Thinking who you'd want to write with, because it's whether you'd be able to write with someone else.
Yeah. I think that's the. And I have nothing but admiration for people like Nikki French, because they're a two-handed team there. I don't know how they do it. I do know how they do it. I remember seeing them doing a panel, and she writes at the top of the house, and he writes in a studio down at the bottom of the garden. And I think that's probably the only way that they don't kill each other. It sort of, the mind boggles how you achieve that.
I don't know. The only people I've interviewed who do that are the Bridgestocks, and I think they're just so nice that.
I've never. They're friends of mine on Facebook, but I've never actually had any time to talk to them. I've sort of seen them fleetingly at sort of Crime Fest or something like, or at Harrogate, but I've not had any time really to sort of sit down and have a chat with them.
Are you going to Harrogate this year?
I don't think so. I'm at Crime Fest in May, and then in September, I'm going out to Bulgaria to spend some time with my brother and his wife. Well, God willing, that tanks haven't rolled in anywhere, and that we're not all still suffering with whatever hybrid of COVID is currently flying around. And then Iceland Noir in November. So I think I'm kind of all tapped out in terms of being able to justify spending the sort of money that. And Harrogate is, it's as expensive to go to Harrogate as it is to Iceland. And I did Harrogate last year, so I kind of, everybody has their favourite. My personal favourite is Crime Fest. I adore Crime Fest. It was, it was the first major one that I ever went to, thinking that, nobody was going to talk to me because I was a fan. It was, all going to be cliquey and authors don't talk to the gent. And they are the crime and thriller writers are just the most lovely bunch of people. And I have this weird sort of idea that all the hate and angst goes onto the page and all that's left is the love. Everybody sort of, opened their arms to me really. It's been a pleasure, and I've made some real friends along the way.
I'd believe that. That just generally, I've only ever been to Harrogate. I've got a list of other ones that I want to go to. But everyone is always really friendly and nice.
Yeah. Well, it's like the traditional thing is, it doesn't matter where the crime festival is, everybody's in the bar.
I think also the problem with Harrogate being expensive is that it's in Harrogate. I travel in from where I live, so it's not as bad for me.
Yeah. Well, the company that I work for, actually, one of the Theakston family works for the company. I keep thinking maybe I'll tap him up for a free pass or something. But as you say, it's not a cheap weekend at all. By the time you factor in all the other bits and pieces, it's expensive. I mean, I can go and have. I mean, it'll certainly cost me an awful lot less to go to Bulgaria because I'm staying with my brother, and I think the three of us can probably have a 3-course meal for about 30 quid. Maybe next year. But it's going to be interesting this year because I'm looking at the attending authors for Crime Fest who are going to be on panels. The list is massive this year because there's just been nothing going on, so everybody's piling into the first one that they feel that's really available again. I think that's going to be really interesting.
So Sam has also said, have you recovered from your trip to the gym? You flew up and down the stairs just now.
Well, funny enough, I've just gone back into the gym after 30 odd years, it's that situation where my 30-plus-year-old brain is saying, "You got this, fella," and my 60-plus-year-old body is weeping silently in a corner, and it's a real killer. One of the things I do is right at the end I do 2,000 meters on a rowing machine, and I am knackered at the end of that, but I come back and I have a coffee, get in the shower, and it just invigorates me for the rest of the day. And I'm not the world's greatest sleeper, so if I get 6 hours, 7 at a pinch, I'm doing okay. So I'm often in the gym at just after 6 in the morning, and along with some other mad people. I do an hour there, back home for about 7:30, and I start work at about 8:30. So it gives me time to sort of catch up on the newspapers, have a coffee, and chill out and have a shower, etc. But yeah, I'm actually enjoying it, and start. Hopefully, we'll feel the benefit in not too distant future.
Yeah, like a time you write best.
The mornings, yeah, which is really difficult because I work. Yeah, life would be so much easier if I didn't actually have to work for a living. But I find I'm my most creative in the morning, and my editing and rewrites is best sort of afternoons and early evenings. And I try not to write at night because I need, all of us need a bit of downtime. But yeah, weekends mostly. So I'm try and be as disciplined as I can and write on a Saturday and Sunday morning. And if I can get a few thousand words written over a weekend, that works for me.
I always get more done in the mornings as well. Sam has asked if anything about writing your debut surprised you.
Oh gosh, I think everything. I'd actually sent the manuscript. I didn't really sort of pitch the manuscript at all to any of the big names. I really sent it off to the smaller boutique publishers. I just felt that was more where I wanted to be. And of course, you get some good feedback, and it's not quite what they're looking for. And because it is a bit of a crossover, it might be that some people felt that it didn't fit neatly into a pigeonhole. But I've known Samira and Nikki for a good few years, and then when they started Spellbound up, I emailed, I messaged Samira and said, is it okay if I send my MS in? And she said, yeah, sure, no problem. And so I sent it in, and people think that you send your MS in, and like 3 days later you get an email back. Try more like 3 months. That's probably more the reality. If you're going to get feedback at all. And I got rejections, but then so did J.K. Rowling, so I'm comfortable with that. And I was in a meeting, it's a meeting that's based out of Atlanta, in Georgia, and we were drawn to the end of the meeting, and I got a message from Samira saying, how are you? And I said, yeah, I'm fine. You okay? And then that message came back and said, would you like a 2-book deal? Now, have you met Samira?
Briefly.
Well, if you've met her briefly, you probably only got a small amount of the F word being used. So I was very comfortable texting back saying yes. And we arranged to have a Zoom meeting, which we did have a few days later. And they talked about what I was doing, and they assumed it was part of the series, which it was. And I pitched them the other 5 ideas, plus the standalone and this other idea that I've got. And then the 2-book deal went up to a 3-book deal. And that was, and it really just sort of happened quite quickly from then on. So this was, so this was March 2021. Yeah. And obviously they had a shed load of books on the ready to go over the next few months. So mine wasn't scheduled until January. So I just kind of cracked on with the second book and sort of kept my head down. But then we started to get closer to the time, and I'd been out with somebody looking. Doesn't matter. We'd been out, and she was driving, and I was the passenger. And Samira rang me up and gave me the publication date. And the person who was driving me around, after about 10 minutes, said, "You've gone very quiet." And I went, "Yeah, shit just got real." And that was, I guess, that was the point when, as well, I started talking to some bloggers that I knew and stuff like that, because although Spellbound are terrific with their blog tours, it was looking at people who would actually get me some visibility, like we're doing tonight. So Hobeck obviously chipped in, and Donna Morfett, and we did Montague Island and a few other bits and pieces, which was great, really enjoyable. But I guess the person that I really have to thank is Jackie Gramosi, who actually gave me a spot like this. Oh gosh, we were 3 months into the first lockdown, so 2020, and she gave me a spot as an aspiring debut author without a deal, and talked to me for like half an hour or so, and really championed, and I'm incredibly grateful for the support that you, and that's the amazing thing, is the support you get. And when you go, it's my publication day, and you get 100 and whatever it was, I can't remember, people saying happy pub day. That's unbelievable. And then we had this sort of rolling blog bits and pieces with Linda Checkley, and then the reviews started to come in, and there is a tiny little part of me that's incredibly disappointed that I'm not at the moment able to join the 1-star Amazon review club. But I'm so grateful to the people who've really enjoyed it, and have they just really seem to have got the characters and really enjoyed the book, and that alone really meant a huge amount to me. And to have friends and neighbours ask me how are things going, and how that's the thing, you don't really know. You can see this graph that goes up and down, but at the moment I've got no idea about numbers of sales. But I was just chuffed that a day or two into the launch, and we were hitting the top 50 in a couple of categories. I never expected that. Really did not expect that. I was humbled by that. I was just like, wow, I must have been wandering around like a dog with two tails.
Simon said we enjoyed Montague Island. Me and Sam were on it, and Joe makes it really easy, doesn't he? It's good.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah,
I'm intrigued about what you chose to be your luxury item.
I actually chose fishing stuff. I basically said I want to take fishing tackle as my luxury item. So I was on with Samira. Samira decided she was going to take fags, and I took fishing equipment, because I thought, well, you're on an island, you might as well. And weirdly, this is the funny thing, because I mean, she's Asian heritage. She chose fish and chips as the food that she could have whenever she wanted, and there's me choosing Indian. So it was quite bizarre, really. But I mean, the box set we both chose. I had 2 box sets written down, and I know her well enough that I knew that one of the box sets that I'd chosen, I was 99% sure she was going to have. And so when they asked me, I said, I've got 2 written down. They're The Wire and The West Wing. I'm almost sure that Samira's choice is The Wire, so I'm going to take The West Wing. And funny enough, I'm rewatching The West Wing at the moment. I love Aaron Sorkin's writing. I think he's an absolute genius. And there's a fabulous. It really reminds us of the America that could be, with the right person at the helm. And we had him for 8 years, and then we had an idiot. There's me getting all political.
I'm always amazed that everyone else who's been on Montague Island has picked really sensible things for their luxury items. So Sam picked a fire lighter when we were on, like fishing things. You know, it's all like sensible stuff, isn't it? I wanted to either take my husband, but he wouldn't fit in a bag.
Well, you would if you chopped him up enough.
He's too tall. No, I wanted him to be alive. Or if I couldn't have him, my other option was a cuddly diplodocus. Not sensible.
No, well,
I can't camp anywhere because I wouldn't take sensible choices.
no, I guess I kind of looked at it sort of fairly pragmatically, and it was interesting because a lot of the books that I chose were books from yesteryear, whereas Samara chose an awful lot more that were more up to date. So I think we'd have had a decent library as well, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, I went classics quite a lot for my books of choice. So we are nearly at the end of our time. Sam has said thanks for a great hour.
Oh no, thank you, Kaz, for jumping in. And Sam, feel better soon, please.
I think she is feeling better. As an update, she's been messaging me today, so we've been chatting, and she seems okay.
That's great.
More back to her normal Sam self, but yeah, she'll be better soon, hopefully. Do you want to finish us off with a recap of you and your books and like where they can be found?
Yeah, so you can get them on Kindle and you can get them on print on demand via Amazon. Just look out for AJ Hill, which is what I write. There is a strange, I don't actually have a middle name, so the J is made up, but it's kind of because my nickname at school was Jack, which is kind of why Jack ended up as Jack Lunn. Yeah, so the J has come from there because when I spoke to the publishers and they were saying, well, a lot of people are going for initials. What was your dad's name? My dad's name's Albert. So I could hardly be A.A. Hill because it's too close to A.A. Gill or A.A. Milne. So we went with the J for Jack. And Dead Drift is out on Amazon. You know, if people would go and buy it, I'd be eternally grateful. I hope you enjoy it. If you want to find out a little bit about what it's about, then read some of the reviews on Amazon and go out and buy it. You know, if you've got Kindle Unlimited, it's zippity doodah on it. But if you like something in your hands, then I think it's $9.99. And if you have a copy on you and you see me at a crime conference, do come up and ask me to sign it. It will be my absolute pleasure.
Marvellous. And that's all that's left to say is thanks for joining us.
No, Kaz, thank you so much for stepping in for Sam, who's obviously malingering at home because she's obviously fit enough to message.